Hey guys, this is the start of making rings from silver quarters. I am showing you all the tools you're going to need. You're going to need a flat round file. You're going to need a screwdriver, small hammer. Doesn't matter what kind of hammer as long as it's a smaller head. We're going to use a welder's hammer. This is easily bought at like Harbor Freight or any other place that sells welding supplies. As you can see, we're going to need it for this cone shaped tip here. You're going to need a larger hammer. We'll explain why. You're going to need this torch. One of these from, like I say, a gas station, a head shop. Something small like this. This is just fine. We're only looking to make the quarter red hot. We don't actually want to melt it. Any kind of pair of needle nose pliers. Doesn't have to be a multi-tool. Of course, you're going to need some silver quarters. I get mine at my local flea market. They're only $6 a piece there. They're called, is the terminology. And we have small half round file. Harbor Freight again, I bought these. This is an even smaller rod file. We got the screwdriver. Yeah, that's everything right here. The screwdriver is what we're going to use to put a hole in the coin. Drilling it isn't really, it's a little difficult to drill the quarter out. It's easier to just knock a hole straight through it and then deal with it afterwards. Alright, let's start the video. Another one I forgot to mention here, we get a 220 grit and get 1200 grit sandpaper. It helps to have that on hand. This is just the beginning process. I'll show you everything else that we use to polish it in the later part of the video. So the first thing, we're going to be making a barber quarter into the ring today. You can't really see it very well. It's an 1896, and we're going to be leaving the 1896 marking on the inside diameter of this ring today. So the first thing we're going to do with this quarter is we're going to grab it with our pliers, very thinnest edge we can get. And this process, this is called annealing. And what we're going to do is take the hardness out of the coin. By heating the coin red hot, it relaxes the shape of the metal. We're not going to work with this coin when it's hot at all. We're just going to heat it up and let it cool back down to room temperature on its own. We're not going to dunk it in water. That would harden it. It has to cool slowly on its own. And like I said, this process is called annealing. And it is very important. Also, when you strike the coin, the side that you want on the inside of the ring, that's the side you punch the hole through. Because when you punch the hole, it's going to deform the coin a little bit. It's going to bend it in. So whatever side you want facing in is the side that you hit with the screwdriver. And that's what we're going to do. After this gets heated up red hot, I think we're good. There we go. We'll set that down on our wood here. Right there. Alright. Okay, so we've driven the screwdriver through the coin like that. Did that on this block of wood here. So now we're all the way through. And as you can see, it kind of brought the coin down into a bell. Let's take that off of there so you can see. Next step is we're going to break those little prongs off, and we'll start filing. We're going to use our needle nose pliers to snap the prongs off. It also helps to have a little bowl to collect the silver scraps in. Depending on how many of these you make, you might want to save them. I don't. I usually just throw this away. it's not really that valuable. You're going to want to break away as much of the silver pieces as you can from driving the screwdriver through. It's important to get as much of that off as you can. Then the next step is to file the pokey bits off. This is a little rough on your fingers, guys, but it helps not to be wearing gloves. They will get in your way. If you scuff up the edges of the quarter a little bit while you're doing this, it's not a big deal. Try not to do it, but it's going to happen. Okay, so we got, for the most part, we got the roughness off, as you can see. All right. Now our next step is to use the skinny small file. We're going to whittle that hole out a little bit bigger. Now when you poke the hole in it, you may be off center a little bit. That's okay, because in this filing here, from filing this out, we're going to recenter everything. We're going to file away all of the damage of putting that screwdriver through the coin. You start out with your small pencil file. Okay, so we've whittled the hole out larger with as you can see, my camera doesn't want to focus, but we filed the hole out large enough to fit our small half round right here, and we're going to do some more fine working with this. I want to make this a fairly larger ring, so what we're going to do with this file is we're going to file this hole as wide as the ring should be. So if you want the ring to be about 1/8 of an inch, you file away the center until you have about 1/8 of an inch. Or if you want 1/4 inch, I highly recommend making it as thick as you can for the size that you're aiming at. If you want to make this into a bigger ring than what it makes on its own, I'll show you that later in the video as well. Okay, so we're going to file that now. Okay, so as you can see, I've used the 2 small files to file the hole out to about the thickness, maybe, I don't know, a little bit more than 1/4 inch. And now it can fit over the tip of the welding hammer like that. Now what you're going to do is sit your welder's hammer down in your lap like this, and then we're going to start folding it over that point. Now, mind you, when I started, I softened up the coin. The coin is soft now. Now, this is the first series of strikes after a filing. So what we're going to do is bring the coin down over like that with gentle taps. You don't have to go crazy on it, fellas. Now, you're going to start to fan it down like that. When it starts flexing back up on the other sides, you'll notice it'll start to get harder to work with. When you start to deform it and hammer it, it hardens back the metal up. So we're going to go back to our annealing process. We're going to grab the coin with as little bit as we possibly can pinch in the pliers, and we're going to heat. We're going to keep the flame moving around it, but we're going to thoroughly heat this entire coin. Also, when you heat the coin back up like this, again, really focus in on that spot where you're pinching it with the pliers. That way it gets the piece underneath of the pinch of the pliers. You want that to get as hot as the rest of the coin. Don't mind any discoloration. If it discolors, all of that is going to get polished away. All of it. You will never see any of this in the final product. This thing's going to come out like a mirror when you get done. We're going to be doing this annealing process a lot, except for when we finally get to the end. The last bit of hammering, you don't want to anneal it after you get it done hammered, because it will soften the metal and it will weaken it. Alright, our coin has cooled down back to a touchable temperature. I can touch it now. You don't, like I said, you don't want to work with it red hot. That is not the objective here. And start repeating that process again. You want to be gentle with it, but you want to be firm with it. You have to find your certain rhythm with it. You don't want to pound the crap out of it. You want to slowly work this thing over. You don't want to try to do it all at once. What will happen is the coin will tear like paper if you try to do it all at once. Name of the game with this is patience. See, just that little bit of hammering there I did. We have to go back to heating it. So we're going to heat it one more time. Okay, so remember how we have the hammer in our lap. Sit like this. Coin is cooled back down. It is touchable. It's not red hot. Now we're going to work it some more. When you work this around, when you spin it around, you want to make sure that the coin is seated as far down on the point as you can get it. You don't want it to be up here and trying to strike it. You want it all the way down. Okay, so now the coin is starting to flex back up on the opposite sides. So that means it's time to heat it again. But as you can see, we're making progress slowly. Okay, so we're at a certain stage with the ring now. We don't need... Oh, it's still warm. We don't need the ring to be that tall. It's not going to be that wide on our finger. And as you can see, these edges aren't quite even. So what we're going to do is, while it's at this stage, we're going to file this flat and file away some of this material. But when you file it, the thickness of the ring, no matter how bent out or bent in, the thickness, the width of this ring needs to be an equal length all the way around. So when you file this flat, make sure you file it flush, even, parallel, all the way around. Okay, so I filed that down flat, nice and even. It's pretty even all the way around. Took some of the meat off of it. Taking some of that off helps you not only do less work in the end with a sharper, much sharper working piece, and you take that off and it makes it a little easier to hammer. You can see where you're going with it, you know what you want to do. If you want, you can take that burr off of the inside edge. I don't really feel it's necessary, but it might save you some work in the end. I think I will take that off, but don't take off a lot. Just take the edge off, that little burr that's sticking up. As you can see, at this point, some of the writing and stuff is still maintained on the outside, but it's a shame that the hammer's going to take all that out of it. But if you do it right, you leave that writing on the inside nearly undamaged. I'm going to keep showing you how. Okay, so we have our work on the tip of the hammer again. I deburred that edge. I still have to heat it. I heated it. Yes, this has been heated, so we can start working. Make sure you do that before you start working, guys. Make sure that you heat it. If you step away for a moment, make sure, if you're not sure, reheat it. You do not want to stress your workpiece. Okay, so we heated it again. It's all heated up. You see we're damn near there. Bang it down. Get it nice and tight on that other hammer. Start working it around. Move the hammer around in your lap. Keep it tapped down. Move the hammer around, not the piece. Move the hammer. Don't worry about this edge. Don't beat this edge to death and hurt this edge too much, but you got to keep it tight. So whatever you got to damage and then take off later, you just got to do. Just remember, you know, whatever's messed up, you got to file. Okay. We're one more heat treatment away. So that's the last time we're going to heat treat the coin. No more annealing, because we are nearly that round. You're not going to be determining the roundness of the coin from the outside. You're going to be determining that from the inside, how it looks on the inside, because marble sculpture is made from a pretty jagged rock, and the artist sees the sculpture inside. Well, it's kind of like this. You have to see the ring from the inside. This edge is always going to be thicker than this edge, because you're stretching this. When you pound it down on the hammer and bring this over, you are actually stretching the ring ever so slightly. So this side's much thinner than the side that would have that that knurl the coins have. These are so old that that knurl was worn off, but that's good because now we don't have to file it off. So let's bring our hammer over, slide her down. Now we're gonna butt this thing up against it tight. We want it tight, and you spin the hammer, not the piece. Spin the hammer. Tap it down. Tap it down. Spin the hammer and bring it in the round. Now be careful not to hit it too hard. You're only bringing it in the round. And you got to keep tapping this down. Don't forget to do that. Keep tapping it down. It's got to be locked on there tight, because this is it. This is the ring. Get it nice and even all the way around, so that all parts of it touch that mandrel. That's it. There it is. Sorry, it's not so focused. That's the ring. We still have the writing inside, but it's a little dented. It's a little dinged up. That's to be expected. But it is the ring. Now, the next video will be about sanding, filing, and polishing. Okay, here's a beginning of the second video. We've made the rough ring. We watched that part in the first video. Now this is the video to finish. This is part 2. We're gonna put a bevel on this, take this all down smooth and even. Then we're gonna slightly sand the inside, the edges. We're going to make the finished ring, and then we're going to sand and polish it too. So this is what we're going to start out with. There's the ring. We're going to need those 2 small files. This file. A rotary tool. I got that for $32 at Harbor Freight. It's not the best, but it's working to do this. I bought the accessory kit. It had a lot of the little sponges in it. I also bought these little fan brushes. They're really important when you come to polish it. I'll go more in depth when we get there. But you can buy all this stuff at Harbor Freight, real cheap. That's where all this stuff came from, most of it. The 2 hammers I got used, the anvil hammer and the ball peen hammer. I found the ball peen hammer in my alley. It was just laying there. And I used that. But then you want to get that sandpaper too. That was real cheap. That was only like $3 for each one of those. And there's like hella sandpaper in there. Okay, get out your old bucket of shaving. Look, it accumulates quite a bit of silver when you're filing while you're making it. You know, I mean, if you make a bunch of these and saved it all, you could theoretically melt it into a little pile and like sell it to a pawn shop or something, but maybe I'll have to start saving it. I don't know. It's debatable. Its purity would be in question because of the sandpaper content. There's always sandpaper that gets into this stuff. So we're gonna file the quarter down. We're gonna put a bevel on it. When you file it, you want to file an even bevel across it, and you want to take off as little bit of the coin as you possibly can. You want a lot of meat left in that coin. And look, this is a small enough size that it's still got some pretty thick walls. As it stands, it's very, very solid. So you don't want to take a lot of that solidness out of it. You want to take as little as you can just to put a smooth bevel on it. And we're going to bevel this edge here. Bevel that. You want it to be smooth. You don't want it to dig into the person's skin. So all of this, you want to file this to roughly what a ring should look like, and then just do a minimum of sanding, you know, just to make sure that you get every bit of the roughness out, because there might be very fine spots that you don't notice when you sandpaper it, and then when you polish it, you'll have a dark vein, and you have to get out the sandpaper and wet sand it again, and then start polishing all over again. So let's get into it. As you can see, this is a very tedious process. I'm not going to make you go through all of it, but just wanted you to see what progress you're going to be making. It's blurry, but we'll whip it around. Here we go. Bring it around to this side. See, we're filing it flat. We're going to get it flat, and then we start to put the bevel. Alright, so after about 15 minutes of filing, I've got basically a good ring shape there. Still, I'm going to do a little bit more filing. You want to hit the edges. Hit them real good. Real crisp. We still got a little bit more filing to go. Okay, so I filed the coin to a pretty decent bevel. Right? And from here on out, what we're going to do is sand it. And we're going to sand it very smooth. Do those edges, everything. We're going to sand it with the 220 grit and take everything down real nice. Don't be afraid to just tear the sandpaper all up. Doesn't matter. Tear it into manageable pieces. This is where the mastercraft comes through, is when you file and shape it. It's really hard to get it down the first couple of times, getting that bevel down. It's difficult. It's something you learn with experience. These things don't have to be super perfect. A lot of what you see up close in imperfections disappears at just a couple of feet away. And it looks like something completely store-bought from a good distance. So we're going to sand the heck out of this thing. So I'm going to do some sanding with it, and we'll show you when we get done. Okay, so we're back, and about 10 minutes of sanding on the ring here. Sorry, I can't seem to get this thing in focus, but it's got a nice bevel on it from the sanding. Now we're going to take the burr off of that edge there with a file. Our small flat-sided half-round file. We're going to just ever so slightly hit that edge, just to take the sharpness off of it. We don't want to mess up any of the writing on the inside. We want to take that down a little bit. And we're going to do that on the reverse. And take that sharpness off. I'm going to take that 220 grit, fold it into a cone almost, and we're going to rough that edge up on the inside. Grip the coin at an angle, sand that edge. See how the coin is at an angle. Flip it over, do that to the other side. That's important. You want to do that for the outside edge, like this. Rotate it a little bit while you're doing it. You want this thing to sit comfortably on a finger. You don't want it to cut somebody's finger. This is so important. Oops. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next step. Okay, so now we're going to move up to our 1200 grit. The first bit of the 1200 grit, we're going to do dry, just a dry sanding, and we're going to make sure that we take out any really rough stuff that we did with the 220. We want this thing to be really smooth before we start wet sanding. And remember, when you're using a sandpaper, change your piece of sandpaper often. This is cheap sandpaper. It doesn't stay very sharp very long, and it helps to just use a lot of it. I mean, it's so cheap, why not? You know, so rotate your sandpaper out. we're going to move to the next part. Now we're going to repeat the process with the coin at an angle and the sandpaper like this. Really want to smooth out those edges, guys. Really going to smooth that out. Remember, this ring can dig into somebody's finger. That's one of the most important things, is to get that edge nice and smooth. Now we're going to do the outside edge, like that, at an angle, very gently, opposite side. Okay, got a really nice coin going here, really nice ring. We're ready for the wet sanding. So we're going to start the wet sanding. You just get yourself a piece of sandpaper wet, the 1200 grit wet, and start going at it. The purpose of the wet sanding is it puts fine particles onto the sandpaper, and it gets you even more of a high floss. Really, you should do a 1600 after this, but they didn't have any 1600 on hand at the Harbor Freight that I went to, and I wasn't going to pay the astronomical price they wanted in the auto parts store for it. So I just went with the 1200. It works. It works. It's not, you just get a better finished product if you go ahead and buy the 1600. But for my purposes here, this suits me just fine. And then we roll the sandpaper up. We're going to do those edges. Okay. At an angle, do those edges. Let's just do the inside a little bit. This very fine grit shouldn't mess up that writing, but we definitely need to smooth out that inside as much as we can with an appropriate grit. Okay, let's do those outside edges. Okay, we're ready for polishing. This is ready. So I've attached one of the large buffing pads to my little rotary tool. I rubbed some green paste onto the wheel. If you try to get it on there while it's spinning, it throws it off. And when you kick it on away from your face. It tends to sling that stuff. So, well, we're going to go into the ring now. You want to polish in a circular motion, up and down, straight up and down and around, almost like you're brushing your teeth. You want to be careful not to bump above the brush and then bump into the ring with the spinning metal part of it. It will damage the ring, and then you will have to sand that back out. So be careful not to do that. Mind you, this is going to get warm too. The workpiece gets warm in your fingers from you polishing it. So be aware of that. It can get hot enough to burn you. You want the tool to spin as fast as it can, so don't apply so much pressure that the tool loses its speed. You want it to have some speed going around this thing. The higher the speed, the more of a mirror it puts. Now we switched over to the smaller head. We're going to use the smaller head to do the inside of the ring. After you do the inside of the ring with the small one, use the small one to do the outside. The reason why you're doing it secondary with the small one is the smaller one gets higher RPMs. It'll get you more of a finish, and a more mirrored finish. It'll do it better. Okay. So that's the mirror shine we're looking for on it. So now we gotta switch over buffers so we can buff this a little bit better. We're gonna use a small, clean one, and we're gonna buff that to a mirror and take off all that nasty green shit. It's important that every bit of that gets cleaned off. If you leave any of it on, it will corrode your piece. So we're going to have to wash it and our hands really good after this. So there it is. There is their silver coin ring. Made easy. It's a little wet, so that's why it's not perfect. But you can see the inside. I preserved the date, 1896, for my friend. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. Very important, very, very important last step. Wash the ring with Dawn dish liquid. Scrub it. Scrub it with a rag. That way you make sure you get all of that goop off of it. Get the goop off of your fingers too. You don't want to redeposit that stuff. It is very corrosive. It will tarnish the ring. So it's very important to use Dawn dish liquid or something else that breaks up grease. And that's it. There's your finished ring, guys. Beauty.